Welcome to the show. My name is Bret, and this week I'm talking about terminals and shells and command line tools to make your shell game better. And with me on the show this week, I have my friend Ray, which you may know if you take one of my courses. That's right. So I have no idea how loud that is. It's probably super loud, but hopefully you're not playing this in the office over speakers. Like, hopefully you have headphones on if you're working.
RIP to headphone users.
Yes. Yeah. We blasted out your eardrums. But hey, if you wear headphones on a consistent basis, you're probably losing your hearing anyway. So I know that I'm going to be deaf by 60. All right. So today on the show, well, first off, let's just talk about what happened yesterday. So Ray lives in the Virgin Islands. That's a place south of me. It's, below America. Tiny little place.
Yes. Us having gone through Hurricane Dorian has provided some pretty shoddy internet today. So if I just ignore you and I'm like, yeah. Like if you ask me a question and I'm just sitting still, it's just because I didn't hear you. So that is what just happened right then. But it was
going to be like 10 pixels. It's going to be like 10 pixels coming through. You're going to basically you're going to look like Minecraft today because the internet's so bad. But this is Ray yesterday. So let's see if I can get this right. This is Ray yesterday.
Trying to nail the shutters down. They were slamming into the glass.
Because it's always a good day on Hurricane Day to do some home repair work. Like, why not get out the drill and get some stuff done, right?
Yeah, I'm a proactive kind of guy. Like to get stuff done.
You didn't want to sit around with no power and do nothing. I mean, what are you gonna do? Read a book?
Yeah, no, that's for nerds.
Well, welcome to the Nerd Show, where we also do home repair during hurricanes.
Yes, and we give bad advice. Well, I do anyway. If I'm out there trying to hold on for dear life just to get some stuff done, bad advice.
Yeah. All right. So, you work from home and the speakers are on. Great. Well, that's fine. Turn it up. We'll play some background music next time.
Oh yeah.
All right. So anyway, back to the reason we're here. So today on the show, we're going to try to talk about some terminal and custom shell setups. So you may have seen my, let me actually just paste this in. I have a page that talks about all of my tooling for my shell setup. And I'll be honest, it's dated 2017, but I've updated it definitely within the last year, but it's probably a little bit out of date. It's had this work in progress on there for 2 years now. But I'm on a Mac most of the time, but I do sometimes spend some time on Windows. I used to live in Windows, so I like to go back for fond memories. And it's getting better all the time. And so I thought we could talk Linux shells and terminals. We could talk about terminals and shells in Mac and terminals and shells in Windows. And so just to be real clear, actually, let me just tell you the difference in my mind. A terminal, in this case, we're talking about the GUI that presents you a command line inside it, okay? And, on Mac, that's either called terminal or iTerm2. Those are the two popular ones. On Windows, it's Commander or the new Windows terminal, which is exciting. We can talk about that. There's other options besides Commander as well. ConEmu is actually the underpinnings of Commander. If you're on Linux, you might be using Terminator or one of the other, or just the one that comes built in out of your system. But I tend to do it use an add-on one because it ends up having more features for different tabs and windows and all that. All right. So anyway, that's the terminal. Now the shell is that thing. The shell is the thing running in the terminal in this case. So different people have different terminology for this stuff. So I'm just going to say terminal and shell and try to be consistent. And the shell might be Bash, it might be PowerShell, it might be ZSH. You might have a custom bundled terminal like I do with OhmyZSH. So those two things are often separate. I mean, you can do things in your terminal to set up 256 color. You can set it up for a specific font if you like it, different color schemes. And then you can also do some of that stuff inside your shell. Like certain shells have different features for colors and prompts, changing your prompt, stuff like that. That's all shell specific. So yeah, so even Visual Studio Code has a terminal in it, so we could talk about that too.
Yeah.
There's like any topics, and Ray has. If you haven't been following Ray's journey, he's been on the show before, and this year he's migrating his brain from being a traditional Windows sysadmin into a DevOps role. So he's been going through lots of courses, and I've been giving him a bunch of assignments, like build clusters, do these things automated, set up some CI/CD. That's what he's been playing with lately.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun setting up Jenkins pipelines, breaking stuff, seeing if it can recover quick enough, and yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and definitely one of those things is like you're spending a lot more time at the command line, I assume.
Lost you. Sorry. What was that?
I said you're spending a lot more time at the command line now. So
yes, yeah. Avoiding the GUI as often as possible.
Yeah, and it's hard to automate things in a GUI, right? So not that it's impossible, but we usually don't want to do that. And that's the thing about DevOps is it's mostly about people, but also automation. That's automation is a key ingredient of a DevOps team or group of people that are trying to achieve DevOps strategies. So we get tons of questions. Like, every day, Ray and I get questions in our courses about setting up bash completion, customizing terminal. It's tweaking out your shell, setting up Vim, like all these things. So we want to get to your questions. So if you have specific questions, we want to try to help answer those first. We have tons of stuff we could talk about. I could go through every one of the tools that I'm currently using. We could try to set up a vanilla Windows machine from scratch. I actually have one ready. I have no idea if that's going to go well. But what if you're installing Windows, you're on a fresh machine, like how to get all this stuff working right on Windows. So anyway, questions first. Let's go through them. Let's see some.
I like the first one. Requesting a page update on Docker Docs. Just smashing the door close button on the elevator.
On the Docker document, there is a button to request a page update. Is that kind of like the door close button?
It's like it doesn't matter if you push the door close button. It's just door's going to close when it closes.
So request a page update. I don't know. I mean, I believe what that does is just goes to a GitHub issue, right? I don't actually know. I've updated pages, but because you go in there and you say make a change, and then it takes you to a GitHub pull request, basically allows you to edit the page right there, and then you submit it and someone checks it. So I know you were just being funny, and that is pretty funny. It took me a second to figure out what you were suggesting. I don't know about you, but in my elevators that I'm in, that button usually works.
You got those fancy elevators.
I know. It usually works, except I think we were in London last year for a conference, and we were in the sketchiest elevator ever. It was to our Airbnb, and there was reports in the previous Airbnb comments that the elevator got stuck, and people got stuck in it. So we were in it nervously, like, is it going to stick this time? And it moved slower than if you walked up the steps. So I don't know. I don't know why we use that. Anyway, I don't know why we're going down that road. Real question, the exposing of the Docker socket for things like traffic, exactly how bad of a concern is it, especially after you do socket proxy solution? If you're doing the socket proxy solution that I have in Dogs versus Cat, I think that's perfectly safe. First off, it's not exposed to the internet. It's just to the services you allow it. In this case, you're only allowing traffic. Secondly, you're putting a proxy in front of it that gives true read-only, which means they can't, unless HA proxy is also vulnerable. So then they'd have to first hack traffic, or and get into traffic to somehow use its client agent solution, and then you're going to have to somehow hack through HA proxy that's set to read-only. So I don't know how you would do that. I am personally, I think it's perfectly fine. I would deploy in production all day long. Of course, I would add like security monitoring and doing a lot of things beyond that to just make sure that my whole system is secure. But I don't look at that as a security problem that needs further fixing the way that I've done it in in dog versus cat. And what we're talking about there is dog versus cat. I have an example. Stack Ghost. No, not Stack Ghost. Stack Traffic. No, Proxy. Proxy Global.
Proxy.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so in this example of YAML, this is for Swarm, and it will take traffic and it basically has it all fleshed out. So it uses console in the back end, so you can have multiple traffic front ends. It talks to the Docker socket because it has to get information about services out, but it does it in a way that's read-only. So this runs a Docker socket proxy that's technically running HA proxy in the background in a read-only fashion. So that socket, that HA proxy container, which is a very popular proxy tool, HA proxy, it's one of my favorites. That thing is technically, it has read and write access to the Docker socket. But the reality is, in every solution, whether it's Kubernetes or Swarm or whatever, there are always going to be tools that have read-write access to the Docker socket. You've got to have management tools in there. So one of the hardest parts is for like monitoring tools or cases like this where you just need a proxy tool. They really only need read-only access, and the proxy itself, the socket, the Docker socket, doesn't have a read-only method. In fact, if you will see other people, and I just recently learned this year, you'll see other people on the internet giving examples where this line will have a :RO for read-only, and you can do that with bind mounts. But that doesn't work on the socket, on the Docker socket. It doesn't. It will still have read-write. So, yeah. Yeah, it's actually a misnomer. So if you're connecting that socket with a :RO, just know that that's not really doing anything. It's still going to be read-write. So this container is the only one that has read-write. And I trust that because it's passing that traffic out and it's doing it, and basically you can control which parts of the API you can even see. So yeah. Anyway, I trust this. I use it. So, but yeah, it's gonna be pretty hard to go true production and not have some things getting access to the Docker socket. It's like saying, it's Docker socket gives you root, right, on the machine, and it's kind of like saying, I can deploy all my management tools to manage my servers without having root. That's just not really possible. Something's going to have root. So yeah, good question.
Can you go back to that real quick? I wanted to take a look at that. So that service. Yeah, the Docker socket service, does that kind of replace the need for adding volume of a Docker socket in an individual service? What does that service do?
Yeah, so good question. So the traffic, anytime you're going to put a proxy or any management tool to look or be aware or manage or monitor or do something with Docker Swarm, it usually does that through the Docker socket. It can do that either through a TCP connection or through the socket file itself. And in this case, in order to prevent your proxy from having full read-write access to Docker for the Swarm, we're throwing in an extra container here. So traffic itself runs in other containers, and then they go over an overlay network to this container to talk to Docker. And then this container essentially takes... because Docker's file socket or TCP socket, they all just use a REST protocol, an HTTP protocol. So this socket is taking HA proxy. That's technically what's running in this image. Is a HA proxy setup that will take that HTTP endpoint that's available through this file and provide it on the network to anything on that overlay network. And the only thing, and so you can see it. There's this overlay network here, and the only things on this overlay network. And that's the nice thing about Swarm out of the box is it has this network isolation like this. The only thing on that network is traffic, the agents over here. So this one, right? So that is the traffic proxy itself. So if someone were to hack your traffic proxy, which provides you all the HTTP proxying for all your websites you're going to run to Swarm, if they were to somehow get into traffic or use some sort of exploit, the worst they're going to have is read-only access to only the networks and services and tasks. So they won't have full access to all the containers or the Swarm itself. This is actually a really cool feature. So this enables what parts of the API are available. and you really only need those three. Anyway, so
Cool.
this is acting purely nothing as but a security layer on top of the Docker socket. By default, if you were to put Portainer or something like that on a Docker swarm, it needs read write to the socket, and it would usually do that by bind mounting this file, and that gives whatever app you're running in that container direct access to Docker, and essentially it's like giving root to a container.
Yeah.
Because through Docker, if they control the Docker socket, then they can launch anything they want, and they could technically launch some containers that essentially give them root through a container. So it's a common exploit, not necessarily exploit, a common method for people to show how Docker is very powerful and it runs as root. So use it with care. It's a great question. Active. Let's see. We're going through the questions. BitMonkey's asking anything about a DockerCon Europe 2019. This year they are not doing a DockerCon Europe. Docker has said they said this at DockerCon this year that it's the only DockerCon. They're just going to have one DockerCon now. Now, of course, plans could always change, and in the past they've changed this several times over the course of their life. But as it is right now, there will no longer be a DockerCon Europe. They have talked about doing regional events, and they've done multiple regional events, which are like one-day mini DockerCons in the U.S. They've done one in Atlanta. They've done one in Washington, D.C. But I'm not sure that I have not heard of them scheduling one in Europe, and that sucks, right? So the next best event that you can probably see them at are things like O'Reilly Velocity or KubeCon. Probably KubeCon is going to be your next best option because that will be places. Kubernetes isn't the only thing talked about there. Cloud native and Docker itself. I'm sure Docker will have a booth there, so you can actually talk to Docker people. I don't think it's going to be as cool as DockerCon because DockerCon is like the original container conference, but Kubernetes is now bigger than DockerCon. It's the KubeCon rather is I don't know 2-3 times possibly as big. So it's a huge event, and that would be the next. If I was living in Europe and I couldn't come to the US for DockerCon, but I could go to a conference in Europe, I would probably go to KubeCon. And then there's other container conferences that I probably don't even know about. So, in fact, the one I'm doing, GoToConf in Berlin, I would recommend that one. And my workshop, you saw that in the ad at the beginning. GoTo has
GoTober.
Yeah, Beth will tell you that's not the right name, but that's what I call it, GoTober. I'm doing a masterclass here, so if you happen to be around, and considering that conference, it's not a container specific conference, but there are going to be plenty of talks on container stuff. So I'm doing a full day workshop there. You can learn Swarm and Kubernetes in one day, and we will go blazing fast, and you will need lots of coffee, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm also thinking about at that conference for the people in that workshop doing these things where we can do like quick little sit downs of like reviewing your stuff. So you almost get like a quick review of your environment for the people in that workshop. We won't be able to have time the day of the workshop. So if you're around at the conference, I will be speaking also at the conference on containers and production. And maybe on that day, we can talk about it at the workshop. But that day we can work out some time. So hopefully I'll be able to, figure out a way to communicate with the workshop people ahead of time. We can plan that out because I want to give the workshop people as much experience to get them ahead of the game. Get them jump started onto container orchestration because that's what that workshop's all about. Good question. All right.
You are 2
not
subscribers away from 6,000 right now, my friend.
Hey, so if you're watching this live and you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button and get us over 6,000. That would be super awesome. Who's going to be the 6,000th subscriber on the channel?
And you know what happens every 1,000 subscribers?
Billy says, how do we prevent Docker from ever using 172 networks for the bridge overlays? I can find lots of dead links, old info, but nothing very helpful. The best stuff there is going to be in the docs, and then also in the success website. So the success website is like their KB articles for their business customers. And so, I'm going to search. I'm not sure if that's going to help. Yeah, I think the keywords there are like change. So Docker itself, there's lots of places you're going to have to change things. So you're going to have to change them in Docker itself. And then you're going to have to, when you set up Swarm, I think you have to do this right now. The only setting is for Swarm is you have to do it when you initialize the Swarm. And there's multiple places you're going to have to do this. And there's multiple, like there's the default bridge, and then there's custom overlay networks and custom bridge networks that you have to change. So it's more than one setting. But I know that there's documentation on this because I reference it every once in a while. Yeah, how to change the default bridge. That's a success page. So that's one of the first ones is the BIP. And there's other ones available if you do like Docker, Swarm, init. You should see some stuff here. Somewhere. And so that's that's not, I don't see that. I don't see that in there. It's a new option. The next thing I would do is go to MobiMobi. This is the repo for sort of collecting all of the tickets and PRs for Docker Engine. So I would go over to issues and I would delete the filter there and just say change Docker subnet, and you will find a whole lot of people talking about it, and there will be some solutions in there. So it's going to require a little bit of stuff, and honestly, it's probably worth updating a document or suggesting a document change, hitting that door close button to get all of the IP subnet stuff all on one page, because there's multiple places to deal with it. I don't know them all off the top of my head. I haven't memorized them all. So hopefully maybe one of you can just suggest some stuff and I can talk with the Docker team. We can see if we can get that changed. You too can make improvements to Docker. But I know it's possible. And I think the last thing we did is in the very current release, 1903, I think they just finished the change that allowed you to change the Swarm subnet default or something like that. I just can't remember exactly how you do it because I haven't had to do it yet. All right. What's the difference between Bash and ZSH and Oh My ZSH? Okay, so they're the shell is that environment that you're in, and on most machines the default is Bash. So now I'm in a Bash shell, so I get different experience. Commands have different options. The scripting might be slightly different. Bash tends to be the default on most systems. It's the most popular. ZSH is the one I use. So that's another shell. And so it's the default. It's my login shell, as they call it. And so it runs by default when I launch my machine. And in fact, Macs actually in this Mac release coming out here in like a month, Macs will be changing their default to ZSH. My understanding mostly due to licensing, not due to necessarily ZSH being better. I like ZSH a little better because it adds more. It has a few nicer things at the command line. And then Oh My ZSH is what I would call a distribution of ZSH, which means it's basically packaging up a whole lot of automation and cool tools and things at your command line that make ZSH even better, and they bundle it all in an easy install. So you can go to the website and it tells you how to install it. And it won't install ZSH for you, but if you have ZSH on your machine, it makes ZSH better. I don't think it installs ZSH because technically on Linux and Macs, ZSH is already there. You can choose to use a newer version of ZSH with brew on Mac, brew install ZSH. But and then you would do like an apt install ZSH on Linux if you didn't have it. On Windows, you would have to. I'm sure that there's a way to get ZSH on there. In fact, that'd be for us to do a setup on Windows, we would have to go do that. So if we get to that today, that would be fun for us to do.
Yeah.
Great question. How console work? Console is a key value store, very similar to etcd, which is the backend for Kubernetes, and then Swarm has like a built-in etcd. Console is just a key value store it has extra features on top of it that allow it to be a tool that used by DevOps and in clusters, and has an algorithm to keep the changes synced across machines and to pick the master and all that stuff. So not related to our conversation, so I'm not going to get into it, but I don't know how it works. Let's see. Helm installed for a few apps takes forever and times out. How do you install Spinnaker? Do you use Helm or Halyard? I have used Helm. I don't have it on any of my current personal stuff. But I have used Helm in the past. It is kind of the de facto standard for managing application templates and installing applications on Kubernetes once you get to an advanced scale. I can't really troubleshoot that here on the show, but few apps takes forever and times out. My first guess is you need more resources on your machine, because Kubernetes needs lots of resources. And just sitting idle on my machine, if you've ever installed Kubernetes in Docker Desktop, it's there like using 1% of my machine CPU, just doing nothing for Kubernetes. And that's because Docker's optimized it. If it was a regular cluster, it would use more than that. Let's see. Butcher Node course. What do you think of OMyZSH and dev containers? Just arrived. Don't know if it's already responded. OMyZSH in a dev container. I don't normally dev in a container, but you totally could. For example, there's a, like for Vim, my favorite Vim is a Vim variant called Space Vim. And they have a container that you can find on Docker Hub. And you can run Vim inside a container, so you don't have to install it locally. But I find that the experience is, there's lots of limitations, and you have to I think I even have an alias.
For Space Vim?
Yeah. So I have this, I think it's Docker in Vim is what I'm doing. So if I do this long Docker run command, it will run space Vim, my Vim setup in a container, and then mount the current directory, which is probably bad at the root of my user. So maybe I do it in here. Anyway, so that has a setup that I do have, but I don't really use it because I have Vim locally and I'm just used to typing Vim. So I don't do that. But yeah, sure, you could run this stuff. You could run terminals in containers, and this is similar to the NetShoot conversation that we have a lot on the show. So NetShoot is, we probably should just show in the browser. NetShoot is a common utility container that, I'll go to the original. We'll just use this. So NetShoot is a container that has all sorts of tools in it, including, Linux tools, networking tools. I put Vim in mine, and other common command line stuff, so that I don't have to install any of this stuff on a server. And the goal here is that once I deploy a server, I never install something on the host other than Docker. Like, the goal there is really everything runs as a container, including troubleshooting tools. And if I need to connect to the host NIC on raw networking, then I can do that with the -- host. Or if I need to, mount a directory to get to some files on the host, I can do that when I start up the container. And the idea there is that you don't really affect the host with changes or unnecessary installs and tools and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely, that's a thing to do. Let's see. Swarm seems dead, isn't it? No release since 2.5 years ago. You're looking at the wrong Swarm. The Swarm, you're looking at old Swarm. That's called Swarm Classic now. Swarm gets updates and features every release, and there's PRs probably every week. So it's the default orchestrator in Docker Enterprise unless you choose Kubernetes. So what you don't want to do is go to github.com/docker/swarm. This is their old tool, which they still actually support. They even made PRs to it, a month ago. But that's a tool that they stopped really building on 3 years ago or 3+ years ago. And what you want to look for is Swarm Kit, which I don't think is in the Docker repo. Oh, it is. I thought it was going to be in the Moby repo. But Swarm Kit is what you're thinking about. That's built into Docker now, and you can just do Docker Swarm init to have a Swarm cluster. So, yeah, it's used by Visa and PayPal. In fact, they bragged that last Black Friday last year, there was like 100 million transactions all done on Swarm for Visa or something. So, yeah, still a thing and still used by lots of people. It just doesn't get all the internet love that Kubernetes does, because Kubernetes is a much bigger project with bigger goals and more people and more code stuff.
I just posted the link to your blog post from that's a pretty good summation of your thoughts, at least at that time on it.
Yeah, and that's pretty current. I think the future of Docker Swarm blog post I think I even updated it 2019, so I did update it this year. Saying that we were just at DockerCon 2019 this year, and we had a whole the Swarm team got up on stage and told us about the future of Swarm Kit, and the fact that at the time it was just 2 people, and they were hiring because some people had left, and they were hiring more people for the team. It was a really great time because they're working on 2 new PRs. They started the conversation around jobs, so cron job support in Swarm, and then the next thing is CNI or not storage support, CSI. So Kubernetes-like storage support in Docker, so that we could get more storage options for deploying your Swarm. Can you touch on what shell customizations we can do for Docker while inside Docker container text wraps ugly? How to fix it? That sounds okay. Text wraps ugly. I'm not sure that is something that is related to Docker. That would probably be something related to your specific terminal setup. So one of the unfortunate things about terminals is they have there's varying differences of the way. Basically, all this stuff is based on standards, and like Xterm is a standard. And so, like on my iTerm, if I go, is it advanced? I think no. I think where maybe it's in my profiles. So there's this key mapping situation where you might have something funky set up where you don't have the right key mappings, and there's a bunch of presets. Like this is in a Mac. On Windows, it might be different. Linux is certainly going to be different. So you might want to check at that first, because I'm in Docker stuff all day long, and I don't have weird wrapping or anything like that. So it's probably just either the shell you're in or the terminal you're in, or possibly the container you're using has something funky related to how it outports or exports the stuff to your screen. So, but we'll talk about shell customizations in here in a second. Get some more questions in real quick. Is it possible to evict an existing pod from one node to another node by doing a post request to the binding API? What are your thoughts? I don't know. A single pod, I don't know. I mean, you could just shut down the pod and then hope it's scheduled somewhere else. You could basically schedule that server. I mean, there's lots of things you could do, right? But if you're just talking about a specific pod that you don't want to touch the other pods on that node, and you just want to move that one pod, is there an API call to tell it to stop that down? I do not think so. But I don't know the entire Kubernetes API. Like, it's huge. So I would say that there's not that I'm aware of. There's no command to tell something to move. Essentially, don't schedule this. You would have to basically use taints. In my mind, is what you'd have to use. Is where that's kind of like labels and constraints in Swarm, where you would have to tell all the other nodes they're allowed to run that deployment. I'm assuming is what you're using, that replica set. And then you would have to tell the node you don't want it to be on anymore that it's give it a taint that says it's not allowed to have that deployment on it, and then Kubernetes would say, "Oh, I'm not allowed to run on that one. Let me start a new one over here." That's how you would do it. Or you could just kill the pod and hope it schedules it somewhere else. All right, moving on. Let's see. Provided like tools that you've shown before. Could you please provide the link?
Oh yeah, I took care of that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh, so the one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No problem. And you might as well break out that air horn while you're at it, sir.
6,000 subscribers.
6K.
Mic check. 1 2 1
Yeah.
2.
Give me that Wilhelm. Oh yeah.
If you recognize that scream, it's usually from Star Wars. All right.
Awesome.
Back to the questions. I think we're at the end. All right.
Yeah,
So we have a little bit of time left. So let's tinker around. And Ray's gonna help me.
Sweet.
Because I don't know what I'm doing. Let's jump into a Windows machine. This one I think is the one I want. Still kind of small. Let's see if I can. No, that's not helping. That's not helping.
You're just increasing black space.
I know. Let's see. Okay, so here's the first thing. See, okay, so let me back up. This is Windows Terminal, and it's a preview. So you get this from the Windows Store. And if there are any of you that have tried Terminal, I want to hear your thoughts on: do you like it? Is it better? Do you like it better, or is it easier, or whatever? Does it use less memory than ConEmu or Commander? Right. So those there for Windows, there's Commander, which is basically a wrapper around another tool called ConEmu. ConEmu is it's a terminal, not the shell, right? So it runs either PowerShell or cmd.exe or Bash or whatever you want to run, but it is the GUI. And then Commander is a nicer default setup for that tool. It gives you a cleaner place to start, I think. And but essentially they're kind of the same tool. And so for 30 years, Windows has had the same command prompt. The GUI and the way it works, hasn't changed. It didn't have tabs. It didn't have, the copy and paste was hard in it. It was a lot of legacy stuff. And it turns out that there were lots of reasons for that. One of the reasons was it was written so well, and it's been used for so many years that it was rock solid. Like it rarely would crash, right? It was very efficient. It was written in C, super efficient. So it's not going away. Like when you type in command prompt and you run that, or when you type PowerShell and you run that, those are essentially both using this C library that gives you the GUI and all. So if you've ever messed around with this stuff and gone into properties, looks exactly the same thing if you go back to Windows 95 and like NT 351 and like back in the early 90s. Like this basically looks the same thing. They've added a few options, I think. There was, I can't remember what the option was, but there was one year where they added one little thing and I got excited. And that's about it. So for 30 years, it's been boring, and all these other cool things have happened. We've got things now where we're all used to tabs and shells and browsers and all that stuff. Anyway. So Microsoft went back to the drawing board and said, well, we can't really we don't want to change the one we have because it's one of the big things about Windows is backwards compatibility, right? So they didn't want to break 30 years of that. So they said, let's make a new one and let's make it optional. So the way that you get this is getting it in the store. So you just got to go to the Microsoft Store and search Terminal. And you will see ones called Windows Terminal Preview. So there's lots of other things that are terminal, like there's the Ubuntu, if you want to use a Windows subsystem for Linux and all that stuff. But this terminal is really about the GUI. Again, it's not changing the shell you're running underneath. It's just about the GUI. And I happen to have it on my machine. And because it's a preview, it's getting regular updates. And it started pretty bare bones at the beginning of the summer. It didn't have a lot to it. So, but out of the gate, you'll see right away that it has tabs, so you can make multiple tabs. You can start. This is coming out. This is very similar to Commander and Conemu. You can start different shells with different in different tabs, and you can probably. Can I do one with admin? No, it's not. It doesn't let me right click on it. And the settings are in a JSON file, unfortunately. So there's no real GUI yet, but this is because it's all preview. I'm sure that in time there will be a settings interface or some easier way to use it. But I'm hoping that this will become the preferred method, and that maybe something like Commander or whatever will transition from that third-party utility that's not always the best utility, and it's not always compatible with everything. We'll move away from that, and then we'll have this easier solution for those of us that don't need the extreme setup. Because if you've been in the Conemu and you've looked at all the settings in the interface, it's insane. It's crazy. So in here, let's play with it a little bit. Like, yeah. I prefer PowerShell. And in case you're not aware, there's a new PowerShell that's now cross-platform, so you can run PowerShell anywhere. And that's telling me to install it there with that little linky. But basically what I want to do is I want to do things like I want to get Vim. I want to get, custom theme. I don't even know if this thing supports a theme. So
let's break it.
Let's do it. Was there any questions? Is it possible to pass specific hardware directly to container or block from being used in a specific container? Like in VM. Okay, so off topic, but on this question, yes. Well, in Linux, most hardware is represented by a file, essentially, right? So, like, if you needed to get to a USB device, you would pass the path to that device on the file system into the container, and depending on what permissions it needs, you might have to muck around with the elevating the permissions or giving the container more permissions. But absolutely. Like, for example, they now support the -- GPU options so that you can talk straight to NVIDIA graphics cards when you do a Docker run. So, and that's a specific hardware device. So they just built that one straight in because it requires special stuff inside of Docker to work. But for other ones, it may not. So I don't know specifically on your specific use cases like that, if those work or not. But, I'm sure if you don't find anything on Google, chances are it might not work. It might work depending on the piece of hardware. But I would say most of the time nowadays, quick Googling finds a person who's figured it out, right? So I would say yes, try it and see. Can you use Bash from WSL with Windows Terminal? Yes, as far as I know. I mean, I don't see why I can't run WSL in here. So let's... It's in the store, right? So I want to do 1804 and so the Windows subsystem for Linux allows us to run an emulated setup. And I'm trying to think on this machine. Am I running my? I don't think I have it installed. No, and I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I'm running... I have a machine, sorry. I'm saying the same thing over. I have a machine. One of my machines has the tech preview with a WSL2, in case you're into that. And I'm just realizing that that's not this machine. So, no, I don't want to log in.
Jonathan says he's running ZSH on WSL with the new Windows terminal, and it works great so far.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is shell versus terminal, right? Like, you can use any terminal with any shell. So, it's one of those things where I'd assume it'd work. But, okay, so the next thing I need here, while we're waiting on, me to get some Windows subsystem for Linux love, is to go get Chocolatey. And, okay.
Bing.
I love that my browsers always take me to Bing. That's just, like, no.
And if you try to switch the GUI on trying to switch your browser or your search engine, it's like confusing. So like if you say switch, they're like, say the blue one is normally like the yes, I want to do this, but they like say no, I'm going to keep using Bing as the default button. You're like the little button way down the bottom says yes, I'll switch. It's like they really want you to use it.
Little tiny,
Yeah.
little tiny feet. Yeah, while we're talking, I have to enable. There we go. I have to enable the Windows subsystem for Linux, and it's going to install it. So that'll take a minute. All right, so let's talk about Chocolatey. Most of you probably, if you're on Windows, you know about Chocolatey. There are other options for package managers on Windows, but this is probably the most popular, and I don't want to reboot. So we're not going to do that today. All right, so on my machine, in order to get this installed, I copy random text from the internet. And I'm going to go into yeah. Oh, doesn't like the paste that way.
There you go.
And so Chocolatey is like Brew on Mac and apt on Linux. So this is how I'm going to get a lot of my tools. Please run from a command prompt. Yeah. All right. Run as administrator. Let's try that again. All right, so this is going to give me the ability to quickly install things on my machine, including Vim. And I think the other day, you can search the packages on the website. Oh, no space Vim. Don't see Windows on the Space Vim website. Hack Space Vim. Space Vim alternatives. That's a bummer. I would think that would just be a feature, but all right. So we have Chocolatey.
It's funny the results differences from just using Google. It's like I got my answer.
Oh, you got an answer?
Yeah.
Oh, gotta change.
Love you, Bing.
I love not to use you.
Yeah.
I mean, about a decade ago, I was given it a chance. How do I change? You were just describing this a while ago.
Yeah.
Switch to Chrome. No, I don't need Chrome. I just need. Where did you find it?
I'll paste it in chat here. It was an issue on the GitHub repo where somebody broke down how to do it.
Homepage.
Let's see. And it does end up bringing you back to that hack space
account. Oh, this is I'm live on the internet trying to figure out how to change a bus. So people are like leaving in droves. We're down to one watcher, one viewer. They're like, oh, watching somebody else search the internet is painful.
This is quality content here, man.
Yeah. All right. So Vim. The last I checked, the Vim package wasn't current, and there was a better one. Let me check real quick. All right, so Vim, the Vim 8.0. There's Vim Tux, which the problem is these aren't verified, trusted people, and I don't really like installing random stuff from other people. So the Vim package is at least legit. It's not the latest version. I'll do everything on my computer, and then we'll see how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. There's NeoVim as well, which is a better version of Vim. So if you're someone who's considering learning Vim, we talked about that actually last week. So go in this channel to last week's video where we talked about code editors. But I went on a little bit of a rant, and I talked about how to learn Vim. And, you don't have to learn Vim. If you don't want to learn it, don't feel pressured to learn it. It's nice to know at least one Linux built-in command line editor, because you're going to end up being shelled in, SSH into servers, and you're going to have to change a file. So Nano is there. That's a great easy one that you don't have to learn because it just works. It's pretty obvious how to use it.
Yeah, I just linked last week's talk in chat. So if anybody wants to watch that.
Yeah. All right. Gonna close some windows. Gonna close my. Close. All right. Vim. All right. So I'm gonna close the administrator ones. Just open it back up regular, and then see what happens. Hey, look at that.
Oh yeah.
So of course the challenge is Vim, needs themes and all that stuff. And I want to change my colors, and I don't know how to do that. So there's probably other good videos. All these tab profiles. Is there a theme? Has someone in chat got a good theme? Is there a way to do themes yet? There's colors. Cursor color, cursor shape, color scheme. Oh, color scheme. But is that a window? You're breaking up. Oh yeah, look at all those themes.
Sorry. Dang.
Solarized light. Yep. That's a looks like separate. Okay, so these are different themes. How do I don't have right click. I don't know what I'm doing. So how can I change theme if maybe you change the current theme. There's schemes.
I think you do it from inside Vim. I think you can just type it, right? Type color scheme. And maybe it'll give you options.
No, this isn't for Vim. This is for my for the shell. For the
okay, for terminal.
Terminal. 1/2 dark. Let's try that. So it looks like there's some built in. And it's not changing anything. Oh,
that's command.
That looks a little different. Yeah.
It does look like a slate gray, not a black anymore.
All right, so it seems like it only changes the CMD. Yeah. Let me try another one. Solarized light. Save that. Oh, look at that.
Ooh.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the PowerShell has its own colors. Oh, is that what he's saying? Oh. Thank you, Jonathan. So, look at that. So for each
that was just text color, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah.
Looks like it's doing a separate profile PowerShell you can edit. Yeah. Very cool.
You saying you don't want that text color? That's why wouldn't you want that? That looks so ideal.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. It's perfect. And then of course you got to get your code editor. Visual Studio Code, Windows. Yep. So I can edit that JSON file in pretty colors, and not use Notepad. So yeah, I kind of broke PowerShell there. That's not good. Are we done? Let's go back to that settings.
It was Campbell, I think, is what it was by default.
Oops. Yeah. So okay. So we've got two different profiles. That's probably the drop downs. I see.
That's
So
PowerShell there.
yeah, and I wonder if you can run one of these as admin. Like you can make a third one that's runs as admin. Because that's one of the cool things that you can do with Commander is you can choose to have different tabs. Because technically each tab is its own. In Commander is its own executable. Um, and so each time you open up a tab, you're starting a new program. And so one of them can be as admin, and that okay. Thanks for opening up a browser that I didn't ask for. Um, so on PowerShell, close on exit. Oh, see the background color. That's weird. How the background color is not a part of the color scheme. Or maybe I just take it out. What happens if I take it out?
According to the Microsoft terminal GitHub page, they have no plans on supporting
Yeah.
mixed elevated and unelevated tabs.
Oh. So well, I mean, so I could always just do this. I'm assuming that I could run two of these.
Yeah.
And that one at least says administrator, and it says it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, not a huge deal, but yeah, bummer.
Give the people what they want.
Get the people what they want. You're creating something that we've asked for 30 years, and you're already saying no. But as the founder of Docker I love one of his quotes is, no is temporary. In open source or any software, no is temporary, yes is forever.
That makes sense.
And what that means is, is that if you say yes to a feature, then you probably have to support that feature for the entire life of that product. Even if you don't want it anymore, it's really hard to deprecate something and get rid of it. So you can say no all day long and then tomorrow change your mind and add that feature. But once you've said yes, then yeah, that's forever.
And you're married to it.
Yeah. All right. So now what I want is where's this file stored? Oh, awesome. Yeah, I want to edit this file. I want to save it somewhere, and I want to edit it in Visual Studio Code.
And yeah, good question here as well. Can you do split pane in that?
I don't. Well, okay. So early on, I don't know the latest features, but early on they would not. They did not. They said that it was on the list. You can probably check for that, Ray. But the early this summer, I went through it and looked at all the features they were listing and the ones they were working on, and it was on the list if I remember correctly, but it was not built in. Just tabs.
He says it's his highest priority feature request. So
really, well, there you go. Okay, so let's see. Can we do tmux on Windows? Because that's another way. I know that's not what you're asking, Derek, but is there a tmux exe? Because we could try that. Lots of people asking on Stack Overflow. All right, 4 years ago. Ooh, look at that. tmux on Windows. Okay, so in the WSL, it looks like I can run just tmux Linux. So let's try that. Let's do that. I'm going to restart this machine real quick, and we'll talk about some stuff. While I was rebooting Ray, did you find out how do I run the WSL? I mean, obviously we can just run Bash inside as a third option in terminal, in the Windows terminal.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the questions is, I would say, because so Windows Subsystem for Linux is a couple of things. You're running Bash, but you're running it in an environment with a specific setup. So Windows Terminal is now available to download. So the question is, how do I run the WSL setup? Come on, Google. We went with the secondary Bash WSL like exe, but
There's a video. How to edit WSL to Windows Terminal.
Ooh.
Let's get YouTube and YouTube.
Can you scan that and figure out? See, now this is what I like. This is what I'm talking about. That's pretty.
Oh yeah. Full color.
Draggable title bar. I love how it, I mean, if you're a developer, you know that like just getting the littlest things to work in your code is sometimes exciting. So it's like, oh, I can drag the title bar. All right, so let me see if this thing is rebooted.
Let's see what we can find out about this video.
All right, so we got Ubuntu. So it's going to install. And so when you install WSL, it still opens up in the traditional console. I like my solarized colors. Always was a solarized fan. In case you're into themes, you've probably heard of solarized. Not sure how to spell it. Yep.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about solarized is if you dig it, it's everywhere. Like you can use it on just about every app. There's an there's a customization that gets solarized. So it's whether it's VS Code or iTerm or Windows Terminal, like it all supports it. Vim has stuff. Yeah, so there's like all these places. But I eventually settled, in case we go back to my shell. I settled on Groovebox. And Groovebox, what I really like is this. It has different contrast levels. So I'm not particularly sensitive to bright, harsh differences in color. But if you do the hard, what hard means is that it gives you essentially the same color scheme, but the differences between the backgrounds and the colors are much. There's a wider difference, so it's easier for presentation. So whenever I'm presenting, I'm usually shifting to the light hard scheme because that's easier to see on a presentation than when I'm at home and I'm just developing. I might be on medium or soft. I think I normally do medium. Might be a little less eye strain over the course of 40 years of doing this or whatever. So it's not. It's technically 6 color schemes in one. And I like the look, and I like the colors, and I kind of settled on that. I like the browns. So yeah, that was me, Groovebox.
So
what do you know, Ray? What do you know?
All right, so go back to that that JSON file that you can edit.
Yeah.
All right. And what
First
you're going to do?
Where does this file live?
Profiles.json. Lives in Notepad. It just lives in there.
Can I? So I think find on. This is my skills are so rusty. Is it? Was it profiles? Profiles or profile?
Profiles. Yep.
Oh. What's recursive on under?
Just tac R.
No, there's no dashes in Windows. It's slashes.
Oh dang, dude.
Oh, you know what? I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm so out of touch with my Windows skills. I left Windows a decade ago, and I've gotten nothing but rusty since then. I'm struggling.
Charlie's got a better idea. Yeah, file save as, and just find out where it's where it's
at.
I
tried that. Thank you,
though. It didn't work?
I tried that. So it gives me this wacky. It looks like it looks like a random location. It honestly probably is that place, but I was assuming that I would be able to put it like in the root of my profile. So let's see what happens if I can overwrite it. Maybe this thing is smart enough that if you, because if they're creating something like, I mean, I get it. This is a Windows path for app data. Like that's a sort of a standard thing, but that's normally where like your Chrome settings go, things you don't touch, things that you want to save and you want to have a custom. Oh, great. I have this is Docker. That's fine. We don't need Docker. But anyway, so let me, users, Bret. Let me just see what happens. Oh. Custom
Profile location. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, open it. Let's see. Open it up. How to install the first launch settings. Yeah.
Here we go.
Roaming. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could add a new profile. That's great, but
gives you no option.
Share your profiles. Oh, look at that.
Dang, dude.
Is that a GIF? Is that a must be an MP4 or something? It's a GIF. Oh, there's no work getting done on that dude's shell. Sorry.
Another thing. Somebody made a GIF of Shrek 2, the entire film. So that's exactly what I would have as my background there. Just have Shrek 2 on loop.
You know the amount of memory that's probably used by loading up that moving image? Like that image has got to be gigs, right? Gigs in size, even for a tiny little.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't believe the GIF standard has compression built in, so it's not an efficient storage system. Besides the fact that it's
blown.
That's awesome.
A full movie.
All right, so new settings, tab title, additional background options. This looks like a really good blog that I should read later. Look at that. That's beautiful.
Look at that dragon, man.
We can do the cal say. Yeah, so 256 color is not enough anymore, and so one of the things that's on my setup is how to true color. Let's see, true color is a thing that I really obsessed over for a while. So there's this, and true color is complicated. So it's basically a gist. And this was specific for Mac, that went through whether or not, you moving from 256 color palette to millions of colors, true color, as it's called. Millions of colors, 24-bit color. Yeah, 16 million. So there's a process you have to go through, and every terminal, and this is a terminal thing, not a shell thing. This is not normally something you have to worry about with it, whether it's in Bash or PowerShell. It's usually the GUI. And then once you do that, you might have to do something. I'm not sure if you set true color in Vim or not, but it's usually so I'm assuming that they're bragging about on here is true color.
True color.
All right, what's next? All right, so we were wondering whether or not we could save it somewhere else, but it doesn't look like anybody's doing that yet.
Can. All right, so scroll down to the CMD where you change the colors, like that CMD profile.
I'm gonna try and get that. Is that path? Is that the same? Hold on a second. I'm just gonna check.
That's same exact one as the web page.
As the web page?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's super funky. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna open that up in
VS Code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's empty.
What?
No, we're still on. I don't know what to do there. I'm lost. Like, it's not. There's no files in there.
We're using Notepad, brother.
We're stuck with Notepad. I wonder if I change the default. I wonder if I change the default for JSON files to VS Code. If that would change it. Oh, and then I don't even see extensions. So default Windows, you naughty
son of a gun.
All All right. Something.json.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. And then
Hidden files. Why would it be hidden though? It's not. Huh.
there we go. Okay, let's see. Okay, that. Yep. All right. All right. All right. Let's see if that works. Oh, I just closed that window. Oh, yes. Install that extension.
Yeah. I love the group troubleshooting. Everyone's
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
chiming in.
This is
Try
normally
this.
reserved
Yeah.
for Twitch, but we're
Yeah.
doing it
Yeah.
on YouTube. Why not? Okay, I'm in here, and then I do this, and then yeah,
Yeah. Bow, 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 bow.
that's right.
All right.
All
So
right.
according to the YouTube video, find that
Hidden files enable in options. Oh, Jason's a hidden file. Is that what they're saying? You were saying that to me. I didn't realize that was in comments.
yeah,
Um,
that's that Golder IQ.
um, no, it's not a hidden file. That's another thing I always end up changing in the settings. Is wherever I'm at in here, I want it to be reflected over here. Drives me crazy. That's somewhere in the options. I'm not gonna look for it. I don't think this file. I don't believe that this file exists. So local? No, no. So weird. So weird.
That's strange.
I mean, it says local state. It says it's there.
Maybe it can't. Maybe because it's like we're using terminal. Maybe it's like a. I don't know if that would have anything to do with it, but maybe it'll appear when we're.
Yeah. It's a mystery. Okay, so what were we doing before this?
We're trying to add WSL profile.
Oh, so we're adding a profile. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna copy a profile.
We're gonna copy and paste it and tweak it. So copy the CMD one, either one.
All right.
They use the CMD one in the and then just paste it right below it.
With a comma.
Yeah, there's a comma after the
for proper JSON, and then I gotta call it something.
Yeah, you're gonna change it to WSL.exe at the command line tab.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And go down to name and name it WSL. Sunday.
WSL 1, but
all right, and then
errors. Oh,
so we gotta tweak a couple. What did it say was the same?
The GUID. Why does it need a GUID?
Okay, this isn't fair. The dude in the YouTube video can access his file from the file explorer.
Failed to load. So what's the GUID for? I don't. It won't let me. It's just not loading because it's saying there's a duplicate GUID, and then I change the GUID, and then it says, "Oh, no, I don't like that GUID."
Not that one. Ooh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, errors encountered while loading user settings.
Yeah, but okay, he's using. Can you back to the JSON file? Okay. So he's got the same, but he's using. He's using he changed the icon, but I don't feel like that should have anything to do with the.
If I just take it out,
Yeah. She go.
will it create a new one? It didn't need one.
You're in there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I don't want the magnifier. No. Wondering if it had a zoom feature. I find it strange that there is no right click.
Yeah.
I know it's a preview, but it's Windows. Windows has right clicks. I want to right click everything. All right. So we're in there.
Man.
And I'm in WS. And so then in here. And then. So you technically, if you were going to only want to be in Bash and not in CMD or PowerShell, which is probably what I would do if I was living on a Windows machine all day, I'd only have PowerShell open. When I had to run PowerShell, I'd probably do the rest in Bash or ZSH. So I would probably just install SpaceVim in here and not try to get a Windows version of SpaceVim. The problem, the tricky part is because it's a mounted file system, it just, this isn't the same directory as it is in my Windows machine, I don't believe. Or is it? Oh, it is. What was the issue I was having when I was using this? I can't remember what it was. Anyway, WSL2 is supposed to be a lot better, so I've already forgotten all the things that people taught me about WSL2. We had someone on the show earlier this summer talking about WSL2 when it was sort of announced, and all the new things that are going
correct?
What's that?
It was Intonus, correct?
Yeah.
About WSL2?
Yeah, did we talk? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think that's...
And we just launched that one, right? Launched that podcast?
Yeah. Yep.
Available now at your local podcast store. Podcast.bretfisher.com. Yep, you can go to episodes on our podcast and development tools and containers.
Would you look at that?
Let's see. Let's look at our topics.
There
Dr.
it is.
Hart's WSL2.
Oh, yeah.
So check out that episode with Andonis. Right, back to here. So sudo apt install vim and vim tmux. Oh, okay. Can't do apt in vim. So I noticed that you have to change the font size here. What I do like is that you don't have to restart it. It instantly takes the changes. That's nice. If it's gonna be a JSON file that I have to edit, please automatically update. Like that's pretty great.
So you can't do like a Control Plus that opens up the actual magnifier. Is that what your problem was earlier? Like if you wanted to increase the text size, like you do in your Mac, you just do Command Plus. But like here,
yeah. Well, Command. So Command. It's tricky because when I'm on a Mac talking to a Windows machine, there's some shortcuts that make it different. So like Command Plus might be Windows key plus, or it might be something else depending on. I'm using this remote controlled desktop thing called Jump Desktop, and it tries to make it easier for you to use your Mac keys in Windows, so it does some keyboard hacking a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't. I would assume that it's not doing that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm using Control because Control would be what you normally would do in Windows anyway.
Yeah.
And Control's not working. What's it doing? I don't know what you're doing there. Let's see if I have Vim. All right, got Vim.
Yeah.
Let's see if I have Tmux. Yep. All right, so Tmux could allow me. This was like something we started 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But if we needed tabs, Tmux could do that. And it basically is like running a shell in an environment that you can leave. So if you've never tried Tmux, there's a predecessor to that people sometimes still use called Screen, but Tmux is generally better. And reason that most people would start looking at tmux isn't because it can start. You can actually have all sorts of different shells all running on the same screen and splice them all up, is because you can do this with remote machines and leave it running. So you're able to start tmux on a remote machine and then exit it without exiting, and it stays running on that machine. And then, so like if your SSH gets cut off, because SSH requires a very persistent connection. So usually when I'm on a remote server and I know I'm going to be spending my day on that server, I will do everything in tmux, and then that way, if I get connected or if I just need to leave it and leave all my tabs and everything open, that's, come back to it later and start tmux again. That's the power of tmux. The problem is on my Mac, I get lazy because iTerm on Mac essentially does everything tmux does except for the persistent, where it stays around. Because like technically, if I was running tmux, I could just close my shell, reboot, and come back, and it would, well, I couldn't reboot my machine. But if it was on a server, I could just exit the server and come back later and have all my tabs and be exactly where I was. And on Mac, with iTerm, there's so much of that stuff is built in that I've just fallen out of needing tmux. And now that I'm doing more containers, basically everything I do is containers for years now, I don't spend a lot of time on a server hacking something together. Because now that we've got, before Docker and before container orchestrators, I would spend so much time remotely administrating servers and, troubleshooting servers, managing servers. And I would be doing it, at the shell prompt of that root on that server. And nowadays, with us being able to use Docker and kube control and Swarm and all these things remotely without ever having to SSH into the box, I don't really do that anymore. I don't even remember the last time that I installed Vim on a host directly and did something on the host. It's always through, the remote tools or through a container where I'm running something in a container. And I've never tried running tmux in a container and letting it sit around, but I guess you could totally do that. But that's the thing is nowadays the whole goal eventually is this is back when we had pets as servers, and the server would stay around forever. It had a lot of history to it. You didn't want to get rid of it because it was unique. But nowadays, everything I work on, all the customers I have, and it's just throwaway. So if something is wrong and if something's acting up, we typically will throw away the node. Yeah, and let the orchestrator or whatever you're using automate it. Whether you're using Terraform or auto scaling groups or whatever the tool of choice is, you're usually not doing that on the server itself. You're usually doing it remotely. So gosh. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking, the tmux commands, which they're all keyboard shortcuts. I'm like, I don't even remember them. I used to have them, majority of them memorized, and I had very custom tmux config files and all that, but I don't have any of that anymore. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up. We've been online for like an hour and a half now, but I've kind of got, I've got my shell, I've got my I changed my theme colors. I've got my Vim and my Linux utilities that make me happy. The next thing I might do is download my own .files directory or make a new one just for Windows. But I probably would download my .files. In case you missed that last week's conversation, we talked about .files. I think there's .files.github.com. And it's a lot of people showing examples of all their config files for their Linux tools. All your editor, your Vim, tmux, your setup for like code checkers and linters and stuff like that. They're all something that would be a .something config file. So you put all that stuff into a single directory, and then you symlink all of them where they belong, and that gives you this organized place for all your settings. And people call that .files, and then they store them sometimes in public. I don't keep mine public, mostly because mine's just a bunch of stuff stolen from these people, and also because I tend to sometimes keep API keys or a few secrets in there. And rather than me accidentally putting something on the internet, I just don't do it. So usually when people ask me like, hey, where did you get that? How do you do that config? I just Google it real quick, and I'll just be able to point you to where I got it, and mine looks like theirs. So I have nothing original. I'm just copying it from everyone else. So, Ray, are you on a Windows machine right now that you're remoting into? Or are you able to get into one?
Yeah, I've got your server in your closet.
Yep. Closet server.
Closet server.
Yeah, so we should spend some more time, maybe later this, tomorrow or next week or something when we get a chance,
Heck
playing
yeah.
a little bit with this, because what I'd like to do is for the Windows people, because a majority of our students are Windows people, is to try to take all of these, like basically the setup that I have on my system, try to simulate or emulate that in Windows as much as possible, and then compress that down into a single video and kind of send that out so that people
Yeah.
can watch like a 5 or 10 minute video setup of how to go from 0 to custom Linux shell on Windows. I say Linux, I mean a custom bash shell or ZSH. So
Yeah.
I think the things left for us are making sure we have true color, maybe customizing our fonts. Another thing that we didn't get to talk about today, but
Nerd fonts.
so here's a neat little thing. I'm going to get out of this. This is in Docker. So if I go into my italicized characters are not standard in a shell. Can't normally get those working, especially in something like Vim, without some effort. And I went through that effort a while ago. So it normally for things like Vim and command line tools, they assume that your font doesn't have an italicized version. So things will be bold or underlined, but you won't see italicized stuff. Anyway, once you get this set up, it actually changes your term environment variable, which normally is xterm 256 color. So if I just did,
We don't have access to your terminal here. We gotta zoom back in.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
I usually send you a Slack message about that, but I can just give it to you live now.
You can just tell me. So I have this term right here. And that's the standard one you will see on most Linux systems. This gives you basic color. I think this right here is a part of my true color setup, which is a separate thing. But so whether or not you have true color italicized is a thing that most people don't even think about. But what I like it for is let's see if I have a YAML file. So if I vim this Docker Compose file, wow, that was really slow. And then I put in a comment. You see how it's italicized? That is special. You got to set that up. And it takes some effort. And one of the things it requires is that you have to change your term environment variable. So the thing that I do on my machine, once you get italicized set up and put in, and that would be from my website on this subject. So if I'm on my website and I go down to italicized enabled, I think it probably just takes you to a blog post where someone's talking about how to do it in iTerm2 and Vim and Tmux, how to get that set up. Once you get that all done, the way that I do it on mine, because here's a problem. If I change that term, when you SSH into something, the term is inherited. So the SSH connection you make will take whatever term from the command line you have. So what I do is I've got tired of SSHing into servers and typing command line utilities in that server going, I don't know what term 256 color dash italicized means. And that's what you have to do is you have to change your term in order to trick that out. So what I do here is, I do alias. Oh no, wait, which Vim? I can do that. So I alias the Vim command to change my term when I run Vim so that it sees the special xterm 256 color italic. And I could probably do the same. I probably should do the same thing for if I want to do that in SSH. But usually in SSH, you don't want to do that because that causes problems. So that's why I have to do it here. It's really just Vim that I care about. I'm not sure that there's other things that I use other than maybe Tmux that would care about italicized. Anyway, that was something special that most people don't think about, but I had to get that set up so that I could have awesome. If you're developing all day in Vim or just spending all day in Vim, it's nice to have that for comments and other things. It adds a little bit of extra sweetness to your setup.
Little sauce.
We have a couple more questions. Looking forward to benchmark comparison with the AB command for a Node.js project. Mac. With Docker, of course. Are you in my Docker Docker Node.js course because we do. I think it's either the Swarm course or something. I do AV bench stuff. But okay, that's not a question. That was just a comment. All right,
Yeah.
man. Anything else on your top of your mind there, Ray?
No,
Gonna do any
man.
more
Just everybody,
outdoor repairs?
everybody hope that hurricanes go different directions.
Yeah, it's still planning on hitting Florida, right?
As they upped it to a Category 4 when it makes landfall in Florida now. So I'm hoping it. I really hope it
That's
breaks
crazy.
up because that would really, really suck.
Yeah.
And I do have a message to get out there. If any of you out there want to adopt an island pet, reach out to me on Twitter, and I can make it happen so that the animal is delivered right to your door. They've got some really cool pets here at the Humane Society, and it's very overrun. And I'm going to use my platform here to spread the word to the good townspeople.
And you took in 2. You have 2 cats now.
Yes, I've got 2 cats. One that is a dwarf. It's a dwarf cat, and then the other one has no eyes.
Well, you're taking in the unluckiest of them.
Yeah.
So good on you. That is a thankless job, other than cat love all day long.
Yeah.
And So, do you know if they ship? Is it just the North America where they ship these animals?
I lost you.
Oh,
I lost you there. I promised a cameo appearance, and she has just jumped on the desk. Here we are. There's. All right. Sorry, I lost you there for a second. What'd you say?
Oh, that's okay. Was she? She did not like you doing that, huh?
No, she wants to be up on. She wants to sit on the keyboard.
It's warm. It's warm there. It's where your hands were.
Yeah,
it smells like you.
understandable.
Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. It was just questions. I was asking about shipping worldwide cats. Like, where can they be shipped?
There's a really cool program called Pets with Wings that basically matches people that are flying off of St. Thomas with, and they say, hey, do you have an available bag? Or they say, because if you're allowed to have 2 checked bags, if you're only using one, they'll just send a pet with you and treat it as your second checked bag, and they'll pay for everything. And somebody will meet you in your arriving airport and pick the animal up. And it's a really cool program that.
It is cool. That's a lot of logistics. That's a lot of things to work out.
Yeah. And they make it so that the flyer has nothing to worry about. It's essentially just a person that is paired with a bag,
And the adopter doesn't have to worry about paying for anything, or how's that work?
The adopter, I think, just pays the regular adoption fee. The Pets with Wings, the charity pays for the checked bag fee. So
the travel, yeah, cat travel.
Really cool program. Like I said, reach out to me on Twitter if anybody knows of anyone who wants a pet with a really cool story. Some hurricane survivor pets from Irma and Maria last year or 2 years ago. So
hurricane pets need love too.
Yeah,
that's like a hashtag.
More than anyone.
Hurricane pets.
Yeah.
And in case you want to get hold of Ray, you can see his little Twitter tag right there, his Twitter handle. So you can reach out there, and he will get you hooked up with a pet rescue.
Yeah.
Which is great. We've rescued most of our pets, and I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, totally.
There's lots of them that need help.
You're not wrong.
Well, thanks for being on the show with me, dude.
Thanks for having me, brother.
We will now that we've hit 6,000. It's we're just gonna do all the mic checks and the.
Oh yeah, make a moonwalk. Let's see if you can get him to oh man.
We're so fancy on this show.
Oh yeah.
All right. And we're going to wrap this up. This is another edition of my weekly YouTube Live. We will be back here next week, same time, 1 o'clock. And we may have a guest. We're actually working on it now, but I don't know if I don't want to make an announcement about a guest and then not have him on the show. So I will make that announcement on Twitter and all the socials where I'm at. You can get all my courses at bretfisher.com/docker, which I just realized that is not on the screen. I haven't had that up for a while. And that would be this one? No, not this one. Where'd it go? Oh, well. I'll bring that back later. And until then, thanks so much. And if you're in my courses, we'll see you in Slack. Have a good day.
See ya.